And hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I am your host, Coach Elix, and with me, the one and only
Stephen Frederick slash medium slash attorney is in the house.
Steven the Medium's in the house, so you get Steelix. By the way, if you're listening for the first time, Steven is also my husband of 29 years, and he's an attorney and also speaks to dead people, so that's quite a combo.
Yeah, just an ordinary guy.
Just an ordinary guy. So today, Steven, first and foremost, is a beautiful, gorgeous day in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So I hope that you're having as delightful of a day as we are down here. I know that you love the snow, but I love that the spring is around the corner, Steven.
I know. Listen, I think for the first time, I was just saying this to my best friend Paul, that for the first time, I am a diehard lover of winter. I love it, but I'm ready. I'm ready because of, I think, the location. We're on the Cape. It's beautiful here in the spring and summer, and to be honest, I really am looking forward to gardening.
And me too, because you said that we're going to live off the land this year, so I can't wait.
Yeah, well, when you say you too, that doesn't mean, let's clarify, it doesn't mean your hands are going to be in the soil. It just means that I'll be handing a basket of vegetables to you, and you'll be doing things in it with your magic in the kitchen. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's be clear that that's exactly how it's going to work. Yes, my hands will not be in the soil. I'm also, talk about how beautiful it is. I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking at the pond that we just so lucky to have. And the dogs, Steven, it's just so amazing that they don't want to leave. They're here and they're staying.
Yeah, and last year that didn't happen. This year they have, clearly when the pond was iced over, they weren't there. But the second, there were even just like little spots that were not, that had melted. Those ducks were there.
Exactly. So, let's see. Today we have an amazing show. I have my colleague, my friend Olesia Lurashki. I hope and pray that I'm pronouncing her name correct, but she'll be very sure to correct me shortly. We're going to talk about empathy, fatigue, and standing with Ukraine. She's Ukrainian born, and she's going to talk about the conflict currently in the war in Ukraine and how that leads to empathy fatigue. So it's going to be an amazing subject, and I can't wait to have her in and dig deeper into what that means. So this is something that you do not want to miss. But before we get into that, Stephen, I know that there's some important updates that you need to talk about because we have a premiere of a documentary that's coming up very, very soon. And you also launched an amazing new product. So go at it. Tell people what they are.
When you said exciting, I thought you meant my haircut this week. No?
It's funny about your haircut, Stephen. I went into, Stephen, of course, we have a bathroom with like a double vanity. So
oh my God, this is really where you're going?
I have to. He has his side and I have my side. And I happen to go into Stephen's side to look for something. And I opened the drawer and right there, front and center, curlers. Like, who has curlers, in a drawer? You do. I'm like, what is wrong with him?
Well, let's clarify. That was I don't use curlers. That was a one-time deal that I was experimenting with, just to see, what the outcome was, and it was not a good results. Just saying. I thought you were going somewhere completely different with, you comment about how much hair I have and it's in the sink and blah, blah, blah. But in any case, I will digress. And even though I started that subject, but 3 weeks from today, this is how exciting, news I have is 3 weeks from today is the premiere of Lady of the Dunes documentary, which I appear in. I am in my first documentary. So 3 weeks from today and then 3 weeks from tomorrow. So April 1st in Dennis at the Cape Cinema, and then April, that's at 12:30 p.m., a matinee. And then Saturday, April 2nd, is going to be in P-Town at the P-Town Theater, and that is at 7 o'clock p.m. So I am just busting of excitement, and I just can't wait. 3 weeks cannot come quick enough. It just
So,
can't.
so first of all, if you are in the local Massachusetts or New England, for that matter, you can absolutely get tickets. One of those venues is just about sold out, so tickets are very limited. But the other one is slightly bigger venue, so there may be more opportunity to get tickets. So if
Yeah.
you're in New England, that's something that you do not. I would recommend that you come, check it out. But also, Stephen, can you tell people what the Lady of the Dunes is?
So very quickly, the Lady of the Dunes is a woman who, in 1974 July, a little girl walking her dog found Lady of the Dunes, her body, and she had been, I think, deceased for maybe 2 weeks at that point. And up until present day, they still don't know who killed her or who the Lady of the Dunes is. And it's the oldest unsolved crime in Massachusetts. So Frank Durant, who is just amazing, is the producer and director, and he had this idea to do this documentary. So this is all about Frank, and I was very, very lucky and very fortunate to be asked to be part of this documentary using my mediumship abilities. And I just can't wait. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to be in that theater, both theaters, and watch the documentary.
And the thing is that even though you were part of the documentary, we still, it's been edited, right? So we don't quite know what it's going to look like. And so we're going to be just as surprised as everyone else to follow the story in the documentary. That's really
Yes,
exciting, to be honest with you.
And also, I did premiere two different things on my website, and one of them being a whisper in a note, which is just the coolest thing. So you can go on my website, and you now have an option to just purchase a whisper in a note, which is a note that is dictated by one of your loved ones in spirit to me, and I write down exactly what they want to talk about, experiences, messages, anything that they tell me to write, I write. And it actually comes via an email with me in the email as a video explaining every single sentence. So you can purchase it for yourself. You can purchase it as a gift. It's up to you. You can request who you want the note to be from, whether it's, your mother in spirit or your father, or you can just say, surprise me. There's the little grid that pops down that you can select. And that is really exciting. And I also, I'll put on my website a Reiki session. Reiki, it's an R&R, Reiki, and a reading. So doing Reiki and also doing a reading in the midst of doing Reiki and recording that so that you get the audio.
So honestly, both of those things, I think they're groundbreaking, because if you've never had a reading and you want to, find out what that experience is like, this is the opportunity to get that done. And it's just like having Stephen live there. And the Reiki, also is just incredible, because Reiki normally is just Reiki, but to have the like somebody like you do a spiritual reading as well, I think that's incredible. Seriously, incredible.
Well, I thank you.
So, the other thing is that you're gonna love this, Stephen. Of course, I do CrossFit, and I know Stephen is
Dear God.
raising his eyebrows, but you'll be very pleased to know that Olesia, our guest today, she's also a CrossFit fan, and today we completed 22.3, which is the final day of the CrossFit Open competition for everyone. So it's been really, really amazing. So I'm just saying it's been really wonderful, and so we're gonna have plenty to talk about. So, here's what I want to do. I think it would be a good thing to um, take a break and get Olesia so that we can begin to have a conversation about empathy fatigue, what it is, and how you can prevent it. So let's take a break. We'll be right back. If you want to join the conversation, 508-222-1320. Bye bye. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix. With me, my wonderful co-host,
Stephen the medium.
Steven the Medium is in the house. So you get Steelix for the next hour, and you're going to get an amazing guest. She is a friend and a colleague. We are both fellows. I met her through the Institute of Coaching, which is a McLean and Harvard Medical affiliate. She's a Harvard educated leadership and high performance coach, psychology researcher, and educator. She has a master's degree in psychology from Harvard University. And she, like me, she loves CrossFit, and I can't wait whether she's done 22.3 like I did this morning. Welcome, Olesia Lurashki. And Olesia, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Yeah, I think you got it. It's Olesa Luraski, so it's he is
Luraski.
like Chianti.
Okay. Listen, I'm from Puerto Rico, so we love the R's, and I was not sure. I knew that the CH was key. I wasn't quite sure if the R was a double R or just a soft R, but now I know. Olesia, how are
Yeah.
you?
I'm as good as I can be given the circumstances.
And
Yeah.
and and what that means is Olesia is Ukrainian born, and you've lived in the U.S. for most of your life, I believe. And,
Mm-hmm.
and today we're talking about empathy fatigue, and how this came about, for those of you who are listening, is I watched I watched the video that you put on YouTube, um, talking about, of course, how this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, the war against Ukraine, has really impacted you. And you talked about this concept of empathy fatigue. And I was so fascinated by it that I thought, you know what? We need to we need to inform people. We need to give them information. It has to come from people like you. You still have family, you still have friends in Ukraine. So this is a very personal fight, and a very meaningful fight for you. And I want us to understand it so that we can stand with you and we can stand powerfully with the people of Ukraine. So tell us, Olesia, how are you doing? Like, how are you coping with this reality?
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, I've been trying to use the resources that, we're taught, but at the same time, it's up and down. So particularly this morning has definitely been a down, because we've all maybe seen in the news that the attacks have essentially started happening in the west of Ukraine as well. And my family is from Western Ukraine. And there's always kind of been a feeling that Western Ukraine is somewhat protected because it's so close to Poland and so far away. And obviously it's not. So, I know you mentioned doing CrossFit. And yeah, I did show up for the workout this morning. And yeah, I might have cried in the bathroom a little bit before doing the workout. So that's kind of how things have been for me, is that I feel like my heart is broken. And that's kind of how I can describe it to people. If you remember, your first heartbreak, or, like a painful end to a relationship, it kind of feels like that, but it feels like that for a whole country.
Yeah. And Olesia, you still have family there, right?
Yeah, I do. So they're in a fairly remote section. So a lot of Ukrainians, we have like a home in the village where our grandparents live. And so they've moved to that home.
Okay.
But I do have some cousins that are in the city of Lviv as well. And I do have some family members that did leave. So it's kind of all over the place.
Okay. Are you able to communicate with them to make sure that they're okay under the circumstances?
Yeah. So my female cousin and I are fairly close, and we text on a regular basis, and we check up on each other. And honestly, she is much stronger than I am. She is usually the one that comforts me, even though she's the one there. It's remarkable. I think finally people are able to see Ukrainian culture and kind of the strength of the Ukrainian people on a mass scale. So that's been one kind of beautiful thing to come out of this, is that I think people are able to get to know my culture and my people in a way that previously was unknown. And I think everyone can kind of feel like they have an admiration for the strength of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah. And you talk about the subject of empathy fatigue, which is really what caught my attention. And I love that you said that you speak about it out of your commitment to make sure that everyone is able to care for the people of Ukraine for as long as possible. And that's really what touched me, like you have that deep commitment. So tell our listeners, what is empathy fatigue, and why does it really matter that we pay attention to what that is?
Yeah, so empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue, they're kind of interchangeable, and sometimes they're used in different contexts, but just for this purpose, we'll say empathy fatigue. And it's essentially a kind of psychological process that happens when the empathy resource has been exhausted. So the way that I teach this to people is that I kind of ask them to think about, like, what would happen to your body if you ran 1 mile versus running 10 miles versus running 20 miles? And unless you're an ultra marathoner, you're probably going to have a significant amount of fatigue and perhaps even injuries and detrimental kind of side effects to this. And so empathy is actually a resource just like a physical resource would be, in that it can get exhausted. And oftentimes what happens is that people are kind of unaware that psychological resources are limited. They kind of have this feeling like maybe these resources are unlimited. And what happens is that they reach their threshold for empathy. Essentially, they are unable to give more. They've kind of exhausted their bucket of empathy. And they feel like, oh gosh, like I need to do something else. Like I need to stop looking at this. I need to stop thinking about this. And oftentimes they make that mean that they shouldn't care anymore, or even sometimes they can make it mean that they're not a caring person, which is not the case. So even Mother Teresa talked about this, on how important rest was for her to kind of regenerate her abilities. And I think it's kind of an unknown thing to talk about, that it doesn't make you an empathetic person to take breaks and take rest. It actually is very natural and human. And it's actually kind of something that is really important for you to do. It doesn't mean that you should stop caring. I think a lot of people think that when they hit this wall, that oftentimes, like, the way that our human brain works is that we like to kind of rationalize things. So if we hit a wall in our empathy, we start to think like, oh, maybe like I shouldn't care about this, or maybe I should, just kind of turn this off and like not look at it again. But that's not necessarily the case. It just usually means that you need a break. You need something, you need to maybe partake in something somewhat joyful to kind of replenish your reserves.
So in other words, and I think what you said, it's critical that we hear it, because honestly, up until now, I never thought, Olesia, as empathy being limited. But what you're saying is that we think it's an unlimited resource, but it's really not an unlimited resource. So we have to pay attention to when we reach that the bottom of that bucket, if you will.
Yeah. And I think one of the saddest things that I see is that individuals thinking that maybe they're not empathetic enough people to help with this type of crisis, but in actuality, they're just exhausted, and it's completely normal what's happening.
Yeah. It's, again, when I was, of course, I follow you. Olesia and I are colleagues. I admire you profoundly. Through the Institute of Coaching, you and I had an amazing relationship.
Yes.
So, of course, I follow everything that you do. And when I watched this video, it did give me pause for many reasons. And it so happened that I think it was the day before I watched it, Stephen and I, my husband, who's my co-host, by the way. He's listening. He's gonna be making an appearance very soon.
Hi, Alicia.
But he happened to turn. We were watching the news, and of course, it's so upsetting and it's so devastating to watch this thing unfold, and it's almost like surreal. And Stephen turned to me and says, "Elex, I have to turn this off. I'm exhausted watching," because he said, Stephen, you actually turned to me and you said, "I'm feeling the suffering."
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring that up, Alicia. That I think what this show's all about and what you're giving people is just so powerful, because I never thought about it either, and now there's sort of a label for what I was feeling. Downstairs, when Elix and I were watching TV, I could, as a medium, just my emotions are heightened. And as we were watching it, it was just so horrible to feel, not only visually see what was going on, but just feel the hurt of loved ones passing, but also the people that are still here that are connected to, like yourself, being from Ukraine. And I just said to Elix, it's just, it feels like it's eating me inside. I can't, I just can't, we have to change this channel. And I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
that really it's exactly what you're, that empathy fatigue is what I was experiencing.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that you didn't make it mean something bad about you. Like, I'm guessing that as a medium, you're a highly empathetic person, and I think individuals who are highly empathetic are actually more prone to this than what the general population would be. So it's definitely something to watch out for.
No, I thank you. And I'm very grateful to hear this explanation.
Yeah, but I will say though, what I also appreciated you saying, you know what, you we need to find a way to refuel our empathy when we reach that place of that fatigue, because we need to watch the news. We need to be informed. The people of Ukraine need us to keep paying attention. They don't want us to forget what's going on because
Mm-hmm.
we are experiencing this fatigue. So on one hand, you know, it brought me back to that conversation with Stephen. But I will tell you, Olesia, over the last several days, as I prepare for the show and I listened to your video a few times, I have found myself actually relating to the news in a very different way. You know, like even when when I want to turn the TV off, I'm saying, you know what, I'm not going to turn it off. And if I feel that I'm experiencing fatigue, I need to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Elix. I mean, I would do this as well, in which I essentially kind of treated my empathy like a child would. I kind of was like, oh, it's fine. I have endless of this, and like I'm not going to be responsible with kind of my feelings. But in actuality, like something that I talked about was that we need to essentially be a little bit more adult about this and a little bit more mature. And we need to be careful with our emotions and our energy because there is the potential that we're running a marathon here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and we need to kind of consider what is the most useful thing that I could be doing. Because what was happening to me was that I would watch TikTok, I would watch the news, I would consume as much of the content as possible, and then I would have these very strong kind of physical reactions to it, like I'd be crying in the bathroom and like throwing up, like. And I talked about this a little bit on the signs of empathy fatigue is that they can be physical as well. And what I realized is that for me, like I needed to very much limit the images I saw because one thing I was talking about as well is that this is one of the first, probably the first war ever that we see unfold in real time. Like World War II was nothing like this, in which, you know, they saw the grainy images in the newspaper and then they heard like a radio address on the radio at night. This we're seeing with our own eyes, and I think there's going to be empathy fatigue, there's going to be PTSD, there's going to be immense repercussions to watching
Yeah.
this.
So this is a conversation we definitely need to continue, but I do need to take a break, Olesia. So if you please stay with us, we're gonna take a short break and we'll be right back, and we're gonna continue on the conversation about empathy fatigue, standing with Ukraine. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I am your host, Coach Elex. With me, my wonderful co-host,
Steven the Medium is in the house.
So you got Stilex for the remaining of the hour, and with me, my wonderful guest, Olesia Luraski, Ukrainian-born, and talking about empathy fatigue and how we can stand to support Ukraine. Olesia, welcome back. And during the last segment, you actually made a very important connection as it relates to social media. You talk about this is the first time in our history that really we are watching a war unfold on social media, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. That's never happened before. We are constantly bombarded by horrible images and often misinformation, by the way. What is the impact of that?
I think we're probably only going to know the impact in hindsight. But from a psychological standpoint, we do know that violent images do have an impact on our minds. And I think individuals should be wary in the consumption of all of these images. I think it's really important to stay informed. But oftentimes our psychology has a hard time differentiating between what is a video and what is reality, especially when we know that the video is reality. So obviously this is very different from watching a movie, because in this scenario, we actually know that this is reality. And so I think really figuring out what you want the outcome for yourself to be is important, because if you want to be able to kind of have the energy to engage in helping efforts for Ukraine, then you may not have the capacity to partake in so many of these videos and images. That's what I did for myself personally. Like, if I wanted to, we actually set up a group to help refugees coming here to North America, that we're helping match refugees, and we're also helping campaign for more kind of visa measures here in the United States. And I need to be able to focus on this group. And so in order to focus, I need to limit my consumption of this type of media, because actually one of the signs of empathy fatigue is the inability to focus, which I was noticing in myself.
Mm-hmm. And Olesia, you talk about, creating this group. If our listeners are curious or want to be part of the group, how do they connect with you or the group?
Yeah, so we set this group up 1 week ago. I just created the group because I noticed that there's been this amazing outpouring of Americans wanting to offer homes to refugees, wanting to help. And most people are not aware of this, but the United States is not open to Ukrainians currently. It's not open to refugees. It's actually quite difficult to enter the country for a Ukrainian. But we created this group that would encompass both Canada and Mexico as well, which are more open. Okay. And so if you search North America for Ukraine on Facebook, you should be able to find the group. But if you're not able to find it, just message me on literally any platform, and I'll send the link to you. I'm the only Olesia Luraski out there, so I'm pretty easy to find.
And we'll make sure that we'll do a follow-up to this story to make sure that everyone has your contact information or handle on social media. You've made it very clear that if we really care about how to support the people of Ukraine, we have to learn how to refuel our empathy capacity. So how do we do that? What are some of the things, if you know that you're experiencing some empathy fatigue, how do you refuel? What are some of the things that we could do that will help us refuel that capacity?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to first state that these things are usually super individual. So oftentimes what I'll ask people is to think about the last thing that brought them joy, or when they last felt joy. And really, it's all about creating those pockets of joy, and just community, belonging, like those types of feelings, because those are regenerative. Those types of positive emotions rebuild us. And for me personally, it's just been spending time with friends. I know we both CrossFit, so that's definitely a kind of source of joy for me, which I know is somewhat unrelatable to a lot of people. Sometimes it's something really silly, like just watching like a reality TV show. I've been watching Love is Blind, which is also kind of somewhat silly, but I find.
Olesia, honest to God, I don't, I can't even envision you and Steven together, because he also watches a lot of foolish shows that I'm thinking, oh my God, like what do you get from this show? But they are so silly that they are actually funny at times. So I do find myself joining him in actually, like enjoying the time together, even though they're so ridiculous at times.
They are, but it's like it's a very hopeful show. I recommend the Love is Blind Brazil, because Brazilians are like the most like happy, enthusiastic people I've ever seen. So I kind of just like watch them, and then I feel better. I'm like, you know what, like these people like are just the best.
In Alicia, you talked about, when we talk about symptoms of empathy fatigue, you say there are two kinds. There are both the physical and the psychological symptoms. Can you give us a perhaps an example of both?
Yeah, sure, of course. I think the symptoms are really important to know, because sometimes you might be feeling this and you might not really understand why. So for psychological symptoms, they range from things like isolating yourself from others, feeling numb or like having a lack of energy, feeling overwhelmed, powerless, hopeless, feeling angry, sad, or depressed, which obviously is kind of normal, having obsessive thoughts about the suffering of others, and even kind of blaming yourself, like self-blame is actually a symptom. So that can look like something like, wanting to watch Love is Blind, but then like being like, oh my God, what kind of person would do that right now? Like you're such an empathetic person, or something like that.
Steven, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So in physical symptoms, which sometimes for some people are a lot easier to identify, go from headaches, nausea or upset stomach, which is something I've definitely experienced, difficulty sleeping, kind of having racing thoughts, changes in appetite, and feeling exhausted all the time. So if this is something that you've kind of been feeling the last 2 weeks, I think that's normal, but I think it's also good for you to be aware that these are probably signs of empathy or compassion fatigue. And there's kind of, you're probably going to have to kind of take some of the stuff into your own hands to try to create kind of like a counterbalance to all of this pain that we're kind of all experiencing.
I can tell you personally, one of the symptoms that I know I've experienced is anxiety. I often feel very anxious about, the possibility of nuclear war, the possibility of more death, the possibility of other invasions. And it raises my level of anxiety to, often a place where it's really hard to manage.
Yeah. And I mean, it's difficult to be in that type of emotional state. It's a very kind of difficult emotion to live with. One thing I think is sometimes helpful to think about is that emotions are very much kind of like tunnels. So you need to essentially like go through the emotion to emerge on the other side. And when an individual is feeling these kind of high states of agitation or anxiety, in which sometimes it starts to feel like you can't even handle it, like it's overwhelming, it's often helpful to kind of like get more into the body to release it. So for some people, that's just crying. For some people, that's walking or exercising or sitting in a very hot bath, just to kind of like process it through the body.
That's wonderful. Alessia, I know Stephen has a question, but we do need to take a break. So if you just hold on, let's take a short break. And when we come back, I'm going to have Stephen ask you his question. So we'll be right back, 508-222-1320. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex. With me, my wonderful co-host,
Stephen Frederick.
and an amazing guest. We have Olesya Luraski, Ukrainian-born, talking about empathy fatigue and how we can stand to support the people of Ukraine. And Stephen, you have a question for Olesya.
I do, Alessia. So when I have been just watching the TV and the news about Ukraine, one of the things that for me anyway, I get to that level of this could be here, or if it was here, if we were told we had to leave our house, or we were told we had to leave our family, everything that the Ukrainians are going through right now, one of the things that when I get there, the thing that comes up for me is just part of it is just not having the control, but my God, just the anger. You know, my father's whole family is from Poland, which is so close. And I just think, you know, like if that was happening in Poland right now, you know, how would I handle it? And I think you just alluded to or talked about, you know, taking a walk before the break, but that anger, how would you help somebody just saying, I'm just so angry that I can't do anything about this?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to understand what the purpose of anger is. I think a lot of people feel like anger comes to them and they're like, oh gosh, I wish I wasn't angry. Like, I hate this. But in actuality, like anger has a very strong psychological purpose. It protects us when we feel that something has been taken from us or one of our boundaries has been kind of impeached upon. So I think an anger response is completely natural in this situation. And oftentimes our emotions are driving us to act. So it can be difficult to experience anger without any action. So I think like one thing that has been really useful for me is getting involved with kind of this refugee crisis. We have this giant group of volunteers now, and the messages are pretty constant, and sometimes it's overwhelming. But I think just finding something that you can do is so important, and it can be so individual to whoever you are. I know there's people doing all kinds of different things, and it doesn't have to be something giant, right? Like, if we have millions of people doing small things, that is going to be super impactful.
I love that. I love the action piece of your response. I think it's going to be certainly so helpful to so many people.
And for me, I will tell you what I have learned from this is to really appreciate how privileged our lives are. And, I often, even today, I mean, all we hear about is, the gas prices and, oh my God, it's how outrageous. And I just sit back and I say to myself, you know what? Our life is so privileged. Our life is, we have everything. So I just made a very conscious effort. I am not complaining about the small anything because I know that there are people who are suffering. And, I'm talking about Ukraine, but I'm talking about anyone who's experiencing suffering, in other parts of the world. I want to make sure that I don't minimize anyone else's suffering. But for me, it's just really being present to the privilege. How privileged. We do have a very privileged life here in the USA.
Yeah, we are very lucky. And I love that you included the whole world in this. And I just want to kind of make one is that I think it's also important to remember that the Russian people are also suffering. Mm-hmm. And I don't love some of kind of the bias and negativity that's coming out against the Russian people because I really think that Ukrainians are suffering the most, yes. But probably the second group that's suffering right now is Russians. And I think it's really important to not alienate the Russian people. I think we can learn from history on this one. I think when we show a lack of compassion for a whole group of people, then it can result in a lot of detrimental consequences. So I really encourage anyone who knows someone who's Russian or knows anyone, like a colleague or anything, to reach out and actually be kind to them because they did not ask for this. They don't like, what's happening. Most of them, they're not bad people.
Yes, I so agree. And there is no purpose in making somebody right by making somebody else wrong. It's just completely counterproductive. Olesya, we're getting to the end of the hour, so I want to make sure there's a couple of things. I know Stephen wants to talk to you before we complete the show, but before we get to that, can you tell people how, if they want to help, how can they help?
Yeah, so we have quite a few resources. I posted about this on my LinkedIn. There's so many ways to help. You can actually donate directly to Ukraine. You can donate to the Red Cross in Ukraine. It really depends on what you're comfortable with. Ukraine actually has all of these cryptocurrency donations too. So that's something I've been sharing because I know a lot of individuals in tech as I'm in the Seattle area. If you're confused on how to help, just reach out to your Ukrainian, any Ukrainian and we'll guide you through.
And you mentioned that it's important that we listen to the right news, the Ukrainian news outlets. Why is that, Olesia?
Yeah, so I was born in the Soviet Union, so this is something I've seen my whole life. But if you're not aware, Russia and formerly the Soviet Union is an amazing propaganda machine. This is something they've always been excellent at, and I think it never really quite went away with the fall of the Soviet Union. And you have to consider that the resources of Ukraine are so, so small compared to Russia, that it's really important to have the support of the world in this, in our dissemination of our media, because we're against a giant here, and a lot of Ukrainians don't speak English, so there's a lot of misinformation out there. And right now, a lot of wars are almost kind of fought in the media, in which we're trying to change the narrative to kind of better suit each country. And if you want to be pro-Ukraine, I would say share, like, retweet, reshare the Ukrainian media, because that's one thing that's really helping right now.
Very good to know, and I'm so glad that I was able to ask that question and have you really explain that to our listeners. So, Stephen, go ahead.
Go ahead. Alicia, so thank you so much for being here. One thing that the entire hour I've been thinking about and just listening to you, and you may know this already, but when you're stepping up to the plate on the break, I said to Elix, "What an amazing woman! That has she's so connected personally to what's going on, but yet is helping any way she can." And one of the things that has just sort of been very prominent in this hour is that everything that you're doing, whether it's your phone call to, I think you said your cousin in Ukraine, or setting this, organization or this group to help refugees, it's great for you and everyone else listening to understand that one positive action, motion is being felt in Ukraine. It's actually even being felt in Russia. So it felt differently. That energy is being felt in Ukraine, feeling, maybe each individual doesn't understand it, but they know that somewhere in their soul, somebody's helping. They can feel that, because energy is energy. We're all made up of energy. The same token with the Russians is that what I love about social media is that we get to see the Russians, or some Russians, protesting, as you mentioned, that they don't want this either. But the ones that are, that are following Putin and doing this destruction, what you're doing also is also energy wise is they're feeling that too. They're feeling that one ounce in their soul of this shouldn't be happening. So I love what you're doing, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not just, I'm doing my part here. I wish I could do more, because what you're doing is so extensive in the energy. So bravo to you, Alicia.
Well, thank you, Stephen. And I mean, if anyone's interested in joining our groups, then I highly recommend it, because you actually do see a lot of positivity in the groups to counteract kind of the emotional toil that the general media takes. And I just want to share kind of one story really quick, in which we had a couple of Ukrainian girls that actually were able to get into the United States, and they reached out to find somebody that could host them, to provide them housing. And we actually had a couple, two male partners from Miami, reach out to them and say, like, yeah, you come stay with us. Like, we'd love to have you. And just a few days ago, they posted a picture of all of them together. And it was just so heartwarming to see. It's one of our first matches here in North America. And it's beautiful. People are so beautiful that it's just amazing to see. Like, I'm often speechless.
I'm speechless. I think that's such a beautiful thing that you're doing. Again, I second everything that Stephen said, and I thank you so much for, giving your time, your attention to this cause, to share with our listeners why this matters, what we can do about it. And Alessia, I will tell you, this is an open invitation. I know, like you said earlier, this is going to be a long journey. It's a marathon. So you have an open invitation that if you want to come back and you want to use this as an outlet to share your message with our listeners, you're always, always welcome to do that. So thank you for being
thank
with
you,
us
Alex.
today.
It would be an honor.
So with that said, thank you so much, Alessia. I think we've gotten to the end of our show. And Stephen, anything that you want to share with our listeners before we go? Any reminders?
That my premiere of my documentary, I say that like it's mine. The documentary Lady of the Dunes is coming up 3 weeks from today is the premiere. I am in it. So if you're local, make sure you grab a ticket. I know one of the theaters only has like 9 tickets left, so it's going fast. And you can find me anywhere under Stephen the Medium.
And you can always find me at Coach Elex anywhere on social media. If you don't follow me, you should be following me. And again, thank you. Alessia, Ukraine, and anyone in the world, we stand with you. And we'll be back next week. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.